Longtime Illinois Democratic U.S. Senator Dick Durbin announced his retirement, and it set off a mad dash for this rare open seat in the upper chamber. This amid political turmoil at home and questions about the United States' role abroad. Tonight, we kick off our Chicago Reports debate series with a Democratic primary contest for U.S. Senate. 3 candidates, face to face to face, starting now. And welcome everybody to the Chicago Report, and the first in our midterm primary debate series tonight, the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. And before we dive in, a few ground rules. This debate will last 1 hour with 2 commercial breaks. We'll conduct this in the form of a panel discussion. No opening or closing statements. We want a substantive exchange of ideas. But I do reserve the right to cut off anyone who is speechifying, filibustering, or grandstanding. So without further ado, let's introduce our 3 challengers, and seated from left to right in the order they appear on your ballot. They are U.S. Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Congresswoman Kelly has represented Illinois' 2nd Congressional District since 2013. Prior to that, she served in the Illinois General Assembly and as Chief Administrative Officer in Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle's office. Also, Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. Ms. Stratton has served 2 terms in her current role. Prior to that, she served a term in the Illinois General Assembly. And Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy has represented Illinois' 8th Congressional District since 2017. Prior to that, he served as Deputy Illinois Treasurer and a Special Assistant Attorney General under former Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan. So let's have a great debate. All right, thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's get started. I know you've done a few of these. We want to start with the topic of the economy and jobs and prices. According to Moody's, Illinois is in line for job losses and population decline this year. Starting with you, Congresswoman Kelly, what have you done specifically to promote job growth in Illinois, and what will you do as senator?
Well, what I've done specifically in my district, I passed Pullman to be a national park. And in that 9th ward, you could see the tourism, you could see the economic growth, you could see businesses that have come in. And as the U.S. Senator, I'm running on a platform of people over profits, where millionaires, billionaires, and corporations finally pay their fair share. And one part of that is economic investment, economic development, and economic growth. So there's economic opportunity, and it could be around the environment, it could be around healthcare, many different things that we need more people and jobs available. So my people over profits will be the investment that we make in economic development and economic opportunity.
And Lieutenant Governor Stratton, same question to you. Illinois, according to Moody's, in line for job losses and population decline, a double whammy. What have you specifically done in your current role to promote job growth, and what will you do as senator?
Well, this is one of the key issues that we're facing right now, what's happening with our economy, and we're seeing the destruction coming out of Washington, D.C. One of the things that I think first and foremost is what we have done to stabilize the state's budget in our state. That's been critically important. Remember when Governor Pritzker and I took over, we had gone almost 2 years without a budget, and now we have had 7 consecutive balanced budgets. We've had 10 credit rating upgrades, and that stability is something that has helped us to attract businesses to our state. When we attract businesses, they are able to hire Illinoisans. But I also want to point out the investments that we've made in education, from early childhood to K through 12 to higher education and career and technical education. All of that is helpful for making sure that young people are prepared for the jobs of today and tomorrow, and making sure that everyone has an access to opportunity. That's the kind of work I want to do in Washington, D.C. as the next United States Senator, as we see education under attack right now.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, all 3 of you right now are in elected office in Illinois, and we see Illinois lagging the nation in job growth. What have you done specifically in Congress, and what will you do as senator?
Well, I think part of it is due to some Trump administration policies, including blanket tariffs on everything from everywhere. That has particularly hurt Illinois in part because so many of our imports come from Canada, for instance, and then our farmers are caught in the crosshairs where they both have to face higher prices on their inputs and then counter tariffs on their exports to China and other places. But so one thing that I've done is try to reclaim the tariff power that Trump has taken away from the people, and that successfully passed in the House with regard to Canada just recently on a bipartisan basis. A second is I am proud to have worked with Republicans and Democrats to author the law that modernized our nation's skills-based career technical and vocational education system. That has helped provide a higher quality skills-based education to 13 million people every year, including to numerous students here in Illinois, where we have an excellent community college and high school district system that can take advantage of it. That law was wildly successful but terribly under-resourced, so we need to put more resources into that.
You brought up the issue of tariffs, so I want to jump on that. Congresswoman Kelly, as you know, I mean, the Supreme Court has basically signaled that the Congress has the last word on tariffs, even if Congress hasn't really taken much action beyond Canada. What of President Trump's tariffs would you keep, and what would you get rid of?
Well, definitely would get rid of the tariffs that are affecting our farmers. In my present district, I have 4,500 farms, and they've been hurt by the dismantling of USAID. They've been hurt by the tariffs. We're #1 in soybeans, and China was our #1 customer. And from Trump 1.0, because of what he did, China started investing in Brazil, and now it's even worse now. And many of my farmers in and out of my district, actually, because I have barn hall meetings where a lot of farmers come, Democrat and Republican, and they feel like China will never come back. So that is something that I would want to help the farmers, because agriculture is so very important.
So maybe modify tariffs even on China as it relates to impacting
I believe
farmers.
in free and fair trade, and sometimes there's a place for tariffs, but not. He's just run amok with the tariffs and really has hurt not only the farmers but many small businesses too. I've done a lot of small business tours, and they talk about they could go out of business, and then the price of some of the things they have to buy, whether it's bakery or a clothing store, whatever it is. I've visited a lot in the Chicagoland area.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, what tariffs would you keep? What tariffs would you get rid of?
I think for me and for most Illinoisans, it's not as much a matter of which ones to keep, which ones to get rid of. It's more so how this president has enacted his tariffs. There are times that you might want to see some targeted and specific tariffs, but that's not what this president has done. He gets on social media, he says, I'm enacting a tariff. He doesn't think about how to work with our allies. I remember that the governor and I both went to Mexico to make sure that we could keep Illinois' partnership with Mexico. Why would you try to do that? And knowing the impact that it was going to have on our farmers. So everything now is more expensive. That's the #1 issue that I'm talking about on the campaign trail, just how expensive everything is. I talked to a business owner just the other day, probably last week, who builds homes and wants to do more affordable housing, but he said the price of building materials are just so expensive right now. So we know that these tariffs are nothing but a tax on working families. We don't have a president who thinks thoughtfully about what's in the best interest of the American people. He doesn't think about what's in the best interest of maintaining strong relationships with our allies. That's what I see the problem at.
And Congressman Krishnamurthy, you mentioned voting against the tariff on Canada. Others that you want to keep or get rid of?
Well, look, I think that these blanket tariffs on every country in the EU and among our friends, partners, and allies pushes them away when actually we should come together to curb aggression, the economic aggression practiced, for instance, by the Chinese Communist Party. There, we should have strategic tariffs, especially with regard to products where they're dumping them on the American economy beneath the cost of production. We've seen that in glass, steel, paper, aluminum. Now we're seeing it in solar panels, electric vehicles, and technologies of the future. So, I mean, overall, this trade policy has been terrifying. Sorry for the pun.
Different spelling there. Well, you mentioned cost of living. It was a huge issue in the 2024 campaign. It is, again, emerging as a top issue in this campaign. So I'll start with you, Congresswoman Kelly. Groceries and household items. Beyond tariffs, what do you do to help make them more affordable for Illinoisans?
Again, running on a platform of people over profits, where millionaires, billionaires, and corporations should finally pay their fair share of taxes, and we can invest in housing and affordable housing. We can invest in health care in the richest country in the history of the world. It's ridiculous that everyone doesn't have health care. We can invest in capping child care costs. And again, I said economic development, economic opportunity. Raising wages, would help deal with, some of these costly items. And also we need to make sure that companies aren't gouging costs and rising costs. I know companies lost money during COVID, but then it just seemed like prices just really shot up, after that too. And I'm sure people were trying to, get some of the money back that they lost. So we have to make sure and hold companies accountable that they're not gouging prices also.
And we'll get to taxes because you've all supported quote unquote fair share tax rates for millionaires. But Lieutenant Governor Stratton, in terms of groceries, household items, the necessities that people have to buy every day, how do you make them more affordable, more accessible to Illinoisans?
Well, let's just start with the fact that everything is too expensive right now. And our president said that on day one he was going to get into office, lower inflation, lower the price of groceries. None of that has happened. In fact, the exact opposite has happened. And he has indeed made everything worse for families. And I'm talking to Illinoisans all across the state, and they're saying, it's too expensive at the gas pump. It's too expensive in the grocery store. My utilities are too expensive. Everything is too expensive. I want to see us pass a $25 an hour minimum wage at the federal level. Right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. And think about who on earth could possibly take care of their family at $7.25.
What about small businesses that say that'll put them out of business?
Well, we would do exactly what we did. I'm proud that in Illinois we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and we included business leaders and business owners at the table to make sure that their voices are represented. And of course I would do that when I get to Washington. But the bottom line is, why do we still have so many people who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet? $15 an hour that we were able to get done here in Illinois. First big bill that Governor Pritzker and I got signed into law is $31,200 a year. That's not enough for an individual. It's not enough for their children. They have no money left over to spend in those small businesses. We need to do more to raise wages to a livable wage. And let's stop talking about how to give people the bare minimum. Let's talk about how we can give people the opportunity to really thrive.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, I'll let you address the cost issue, but Lieutenant Governor Stratton brought up the minimum wage. She wants a uniform $25 minimum wage. Does that work nationwide when you've got cost of living differences across the country? And as I understand, you do also support a hike in the minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, $7.25 is poverty wages at this point. I'm actually a co-sponsor of Bernie Sanders' bill, the Raise the Wage Act, which goes to $17, which a lot of my House colleagues have supported. And, many states are kind of now in that range. I, too, am concerned as a former small business person. I signed the front of the check and the back of the check. And I think that a $25 hour minimum wage could really harm small businesses and curtail hiring at those businesses. In addition, for our youth, my second job in life was working at McDonald's. I'm not sure I would have gotten that job at $25 an hour. I didn't know how to make a burger. I can make a decent one now, but at that time I didn't have the skills. Going to your other question, one of the biggest problems in the grocery and food area is a huge concentration of market power among certain large corporations. Just for instance, in the meat packing industry, there are 4 companies that control 80 to 90% of the business. In grocery and grocery store chains, I led the fight, or I helped lead the fight to basically stop the Kroger's-Albertsons merger, which would have led to increased market consolidation, higher prices, and worse working conditions. We were able to successfully stop that merger, and I earned the endorsement of the United Food and Commercial Workers 881 endorsement because of that. But we need to do more of that. We got to break some of this monopoly power that large corporations have in the food industry.
All right, Congressman.
I did want to just say something.
Yeah, Congressman Kelly, I'll get to you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. I've probably met with about 50 small businesses around the Chicagoland area, in and out of Chicago, and one of their concerns is if we do raise it too high, that they'll have to shutter their doors or have less people working there. They'll have to work more as the owner. But I agree. I'm saying $17 an hour because also we have to be realistic and look at what we can actually get passed, in the House and the Senate. That's part of the bottom line, too. We need 218 votes in the House, 60 votes in the Senate. But even with the $17 an hour, I would look at giving tax credits to small businesses that do participate.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Stroud, you wanted to jump in because there were some claims made about a $25 minimum wage level.
Yeah, and I think what's important to recognize is I think that bill that's been filed in the House or in Congress is for $17 an hour by 2030. And I'm thinking about people who right now, as you asked, cannot afford groceries, cannot afford to put food on the table. And we're seeing generational poverty continue because we are not taking the bold steps needed to make sure people make a living wage. And I can tell you, people can't wait till 2030. If there's going to be a $17 an hour federal minimum wage, it should happen tomorrow. But here we are talking about what might be realistic. Well, what's not realistic is expecting people to not be able to put food on the table, not being able to save for their future, not being able to give their children what they need. And I think right now what I'm hearing from Illinoisans is they're not looking for it. Well, let's just find what seems to be the easiest thing to do. They're looking for leaders who are going to get to Washington with bold ideas and be courageous to fight for them.
All right, and
you can have bold ideas, but if you don't have the vote, I'm bold and courageous, but that's just the bottom line. If you don't have the vote, I've been in Congress almost 13 years, only in the majority 4 of those years, but I've gotten things passed under Biden, Trump, and Barack Obama, but still, even Bernie Sanders, who is probably to the left of all of us.
I think he's bold and courageous.
Yeah.
Look, I think he basically said, look, we need to get votes to get this passed. Yeah. And if it doesn't get passed, it's meaningless.
Well, you know what? When the SNAP benefits, how SNAP benefits have now been threatened for so many, what so many people don't realize is how many people are working full time and getting SNAP benefits.
Well, we realize that.
And the reason why it's important to point out is because wages are not high enough. And why should we have a country where 40% of Americans do not make a livable wage?
All right, so you've all brought up the point that you believe in millionaires paying fair share. Can I get anyone pinned down on a rate? What are fair rates here if we're talking about graduated rates for, let's say, income over $1 million? 35%? 40%? Anyone want to throw out a number?
Well, I looked at working with the CBO. We were talking about, I think it was less than 1,000 people if they paid. I have like a formula if you made over 100 million actually, but that we would raise $500 billion. But also the other part of the millionaire billionaire corporation is the change, what happened in the big ugly bill. The tax credits, the $1 trillion plus tax credits given to the well-off and well-connected, that would be, money coming back in also.
Anyway, what does fair share mean? What specific rate, what levels of income?
Well, to me, it just means that, even without giving a specific number, there will be goals about what kind of income you want to be able to bring in. But for me, what it is why are the vast majority of Americans who are trying to make ends meet, or even just think about Illinoisans who are working hard every day, working people, and they're not getting the same benefits? We should be giving tax breaks to the middle class. That's what I'm going to fight for, and I want to pay for it by a tax increase on those making $1 million or more, and making sure corporations, of course, are paying their fair share. But remember, when Donald Trump and Republicans stripped away health care from millions of Americans, why did they do that? They did it to make sure that they could get tax breaks. The wealthiest among us could get tax breaks. So there's something wrong with this system. We need people who are going to get into Washington and fight for everyday people, and that's the kind of leader I'm going to be.
50% of the benefits of this, what he calls the big, beautiful bill, I call it the large, lousy law, went to the top 5% of income earners. And it's going to leave not only all those cuts in place, which we talked about with Medicaid, but also with SNAP, but it's also going to leave debt for generations. It's going to add $2, $3, $4 trillion to our national debt to be paid by our children and grandchildren, and that's not right. And so I think that at this point we have to make sure we revert a little bit and we make sure that we have the resources to take care of real needs, whether in healthcare, education, food security, or housing, which are being neglected because of this, what I call Lars Lousy law.
So that would dictate the rates you want. A broad issue here with the economy is the rapidly developing technology of AI, and it encompasses things like data centers, which are popping up in the Midwest and in Illinois, and we know that they suck up water and they're raising utility costs. So with AI, what can you do as Senator to foster responsible development of this technology that won't eviscerate jobs and entire industries?
Well, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, my colleague Will Hurd and I, we had year-long...
This is a Republican from Texas, correct? Okay.
Yeah, a year-long study and hearings about AI, and it was at a bipartisan center, and we looked at workforce bias, privacy, and he's ex-CIA, so he looked at national security. But my concern was, were my constituents, were Illinoisans, going to have the skills they needed to be involved in an AI society? And also bias was very, important to me. And actually, I held something at the South Shore Cultural Center with young college students about AI so they could learn, more about it. But we have to put guardrails in. I'm on Energy and Commerce, and we're talking about it, more and more. And there was a bipartisan group, equally Democrat and Republican, and there is a list of recommendations, that they put out. I'll be happy to send it to you. But a list of recommendations. But unfortunately, we can't get the bill. They couldn't get the recommendations called. We have one of our reps, Obanalty, is an AI expert, and he's a Republican, but they still won't call the recommendations. But that's what we need to look at, guardrails, and just not let every job go to AI, and make sure people are trained properly.
All right, I want to get the two of you in, but we have to go to a commercial break. So we are going to be right back with more on this issue and other issues, immigration, democracy, so much more. Please don't go away. Thanks. All right, welcome back to our Senate Democratic primary candidate forum for U.S. Senate here from Illinois. Let's pick up on this issue of AI. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, what will you do as Senator to foster responsible development that will not take away jobs and industries?
Well, the key word is responsible development. It's not that we want Illinois or the United States to be behind in these technologies. We want to make sure that we can move forward and take advantage of them. But what we have to recognize is that we have to protect workers' rights, along with protecting data and making sure that, you know, there's privacy protections and guardrails. I think about workers' rights because when I pick up the phone and, you call whatever store you're calling, I am that person that's always saying, Representative, I want to talk to a live person, and you kind of go through all of those prompts. And I'm finding it harder and harder to actually get to a person. And it makes me wonder, where is that job? Who has taken? And we cannot allow corporations that may want to restructure or come in and then decide that we're just going to, without any type of benefit to employees or any kind of, package to help them off, just get rid of people. So we have to stand up and make sure workers' rights are protected. We right now have a president in Washington who doesn't care about workers' rights, who's attacking workers, attacking collective bargaining rights, doesn't want to make sure that people can continue in their jobs. And all of that is to make sure that he and his friends can get wealthier. And so I want to be someone that both fights to make sure that we responsibly move forward with AI. It's not that we don't want it, but we have to do it the right way, make sure privacy concerns, data concerns are protected, but also stand up for workers and make sure it's done in a way that workers' rights are not under threat.
So have labor unions involved. Congressman Krishnamurthy, how do you protect jobs? How do you protect industries from going away with the advancement of AI?
Sure. Look, I mean, AI is only going to be useful if it leads to another AI called Amazing Illinois. Okay? It can either help us or it can hurt us. And at least two sets of things have to happen, in my humble opinion, for it to help us. One, you do have to have those guardrails, and I agree there have to be stakeholders at the table, including unions and others, as we develop protections for workers and industries that are going to be affected by AI. Also, we have to have consumer safety and non-discrimination provisions that are guardrails. But on top of that, the other set of issues has to do with democratizing AI. It can't be in the hands of just some large special interests or corporations. It has to be something accessible to everyone. So that means
is this like antitrust legislation? Is there a tool that you can use to break up some of the control of AI?
Yeah, but I was also thinking we have to invest in foundational research in AI that makes it available for all small businesses, entrepreneurs, researchers, and others. It can't just be proprietary to just a few corporations. The other piece of it is we have to embed AI in every level of education. Okay, so it enhances people's productivity as opposed to making them redundant. And so that is something that we have to do in trade and technical schools, which I've kind of worked on for 10 years, but also all forms of post-secondary education and even elementary school. It has to be at all levels.
All right, let's move on to another subject. I assume that the folks that are going to pull a Democratic ballot in this primary are concerned about the issue of democracy, concerned that President Trump has said he wants to have Republicans take over elections. Day one, Congresswoman Kelly, what will you propose? What will you push for to strengthen the three branches of government, the checks and balances, elected representative democracy, voting, elections, all of those things under the bubble of democracy? What specific things will you push for?
Well, day one, I voted for it twice in the House, John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Day one, I would push for that. Day one, I would also push for ethical standards and behavior for the Supreme Court. I think they don't seem to follow the same ethics that those of us in the Congress and in the Senate have to follow, so I would definitely push for that. I also think there should be term limits with them, but also working with empowering and working with all of our AGs. The Democratic AGs have done a fantastic job in what they've done. They've held us together as we are not in the majority, so making sure that they have what they need, the resources they need to continue doing their job, but definitely the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Shea, Congresswoman Kelly brought up an interesting specific there, term limits for Supreme Court justices. So let me ask you that. Do you support that? And day one, what do you do to strengthen democracy?
Well, you also talked a little bit about the three branches of government, which are supposed to be three co-equal branches, but that's not what we're seeing happening right now. We have a Supreme Court that is rubber stamping Donald Trump's authoritarian agenda. And when we think about whether it's voting rights or any other rights that we have as Americans, they're all under threat right now because of this president who's a wannabe dictator. And so I've been calling him out. And the fact that he has this authoritarian agenda, that he wants to even just nationalize elections, I don't want him to have any part of Illinois elections. We have safe elections. We don't need him. They're separated by states, and we don't need him doing that. And we see the different ways that this president is trying to interfere with elections. In fact, he does not want to see us have elections. When you see him wearing that red Trump 2028 hat, contrary to the Constitution, that is an example of him telling us that he wants to do whatever he wants, regardless of what the Constitution says. So we need people in Washington who are going to stand up, as I have been standing up to him. We need real fighters. And I'm going to continue to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and make sure that he understands that we're not going to allow this. We've been doing it. What have we done here in Illinois? We made Election Day a state holiday. We have made mail-in voting permanent. We extended hours for voting. And I'm going to make sure that we continue to make sure that we pass legislation and advocate for those same kinds of practical things that we've already gotten done right here in Illinois. But I can tell you, I'm also not going to vote for one single appointee that this president makes to the United States Supreme Court. Yes, we need to look at potential term limits. I look at all of it. We need to look at extending, expanding the court if that's something that's going to happen, and make sure that that is a possibility. But we know right now we are not seeing the Supreme Court do its job, and in so many ways we need Congress to step up and do more and fight for the people.
All right, well, speaking of that, let me revise this a little bit for you, Congressman, because the three of you will agree on your opposition to President Trump, but what can be done on a bipartisan basis where you can get some Republicans on board to strengthen some of these institutions of democracy, elections, the three branches of government, federalism, states' rights, those kinds of things?
Well, actually, I associate myself with what Robin said about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Actually, parts of it have support from Republicans, and we should restore some of those pre-clearance requirements for formerly states of the Confederacy who are now putting in all kinds of laws to suppress the vote in their jurisdictions. On top of that, I've introduced legislation as part of the current DHS funding talks to prevent ICE and CBP agents from being placed at polling stations, because I'm worried that DHS agents could be used as almost like a paramilitary force to intimidate voters. And on top of that, some bipartisan bills. My legislation in Congress right now is to ban individual stock trading, because I feel that there's a lot of distrust of Congress when members are trading individual securities. I also believe in term limits for members of Congress. Also, my bill to put 18-year term limits for the Supreme Court, I think could command a lot of support. And then finally, age limits. I think that is something that also should happen too. I think a number of reforms have to happen for people to once again trust the Article 1 or the people's branch of government.
All right, so you brought up stock trading. I'm sorry, I just want to show a hand. A ban on stock trading for elected officials? Okay.
Yes.
All right, Congresswoman Kelly.
I was going to say the other thing is, I think with the Republicans, there are so many loopholes that we know need to be closed. There are things he's doing that I know even, I would say, our Republican colleagues, even though they've ceded their power to him, didn't even think he would go that far in some of the things that he's doing. So we need to look at what he has pushed and gotten away with, that we need to shut those loopholes, make the laws stronger. Not that he's following all the laws, but you know what I mean? How do we really hold him accountable? And I know the Supreme Court gave him the immunity, but like what I'm doing now with Kristi Noem, with impeachment, we can hold Hegseth accountable. We can hold his secretaries accountable, even if we can't get to him right away.
All right, I want to ask you a politics question, because I think, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, you've said you would not support Chuck Schumer to be the highest-ranking Democrat, the Democratic leader in the Senate. Who would you support for that role?
I will listen to anybody who's ready to fight. Right now, what I'm hearing from Illinoisans all across the state is that they are looking for fighters and not folders. They are looking for people who are going to stand up and not give in when we make demands. They do not, compromise on that. I mean, it's fine to hear about, and I'm somebody who, when I was a legislator in the Illinois House of Representatives, I had 10 bills that were signed into law that I was the chief sponsor. All of them were passed on I just want to say this, on a bipartisan basis. But that's not what we're living with right now with MAGA Republicans. And so we have to have the kind of leadership that's going to stand up for our democratic values and not give in.
Chuck Schumer, Congress.
I have to see who's running against him, or if he's even running.
Congressman.
Same thing, but I want to hear whoever is running address 2 points. One, the affordability crisis, and two, holding Trump accountable. I think these are the two things I hear about over and over again, and my vote will go to the person who's most convincing on those two issues.
Okay.
But the thing is...
Well, Congressman...
No, I just wanted to say something about, we pass legislation right now, despite the messy, I know it looks ugly, I know what people think, but I just got something passed about preemies, and it was bipartisan. So even though we're fighting about some things,
there are issues that have bipartisan.
I mean, on energy and commerce, yeah. So
but I do want to just say that one of the reasons why people are so frustrated with Washington, D.C. right now, and why we see the lowest approval ratings for Congress, is just exactly that. Like, we know that we need new leadership, we need new energy, we need people who are going to meet this moment. And I'm the only one that's able to say on this stage that Chuck Schumer should not be the leader of the Democratic Party, and I believe that most Illinoisans and Democrats agree with me.
Okay, let's talk about an issue that you agree on in principle on a lot of things, but you differ on some of the specifics. Immigration. We've seen immigration forces draw down in Minneapolis. We saw some chaos here in Chicago with Operation Midway Blitz. Commander Bavino from the Customs and Border Patrol is now gone. The consensus now with Tom Homan taking over that there's going to be a different way that they do this. But Congressman, you and the Lieutenant Governor have called for abolishing ICE. But if there's no ICE, how would you propose the nation enforce federal immigration law?
Well, actually, what I've said is abolish Trump's ICE. So what that means is the following has to happen for me to send a single more dollar to ICE or CBP or DHS at this point. One, Kristi Noem has got to go. Either she's fired or, as Robin's bill calls for, impeaching her. Secondly, the masks have to come off, ID has to go on, body cameras have to go on, no more warrantless arrests. There must be third-party investigations of the use of force, excessive force, as you've investigated. And then there can't be roving gangs of ICE and CBP agents stirring up trouble in cities. So this position of abolishing Trump's ICE, something that's shared by Governor Pritzker and others, is about how do we overhaul this particular department and make sure that, it's accountable to the people again and not used as some kind of paramilitary force by the president. And by the way, I think ICE and CBP are going to come back. That's what the president is talking about. He's saying they might be back as early as March. And so we have to be ready for that. All
right, Congresswoman Kelly, abolish ICE altogether, reform it. I assume you're going to agree with some of these reforms.
Mine is
where you disagree?
Replace, dismantle Homeland Security, period. ICE is a part of that. The Border Patrol is a part of it. It was the Border Patrol agents that killed Alex Preddy. The agency that deals with asylum and citizenship, to me, all of it needs to be redone, revamped, revised. It's not just one thing.
Does that mean open borders then? How do you enforce
No. I'm not saying open borders. I'm just saying it needs to be revised in how it is now. When we need more people on the borders that can deal with asylum. We need, so people aren't waiting forever. We need immigration reform. And this is all a part of immigration reform, revising, revamping, Homeland Security, maybe ICE or whatever we call it, may not be ICE. We call it whatever we use for enforcement. It may not even be under Homeland Security. Some people suggest Department of Justice, not this Department of Justice, because that needs to go too. I mean, everything is so, every agency, every secretary is so incompetent, but I do believe that this has shown us that Homeland Security is too big, too unwieldy, not accountable, and it all needs to go, and we need to redo it, quite frankly. It needs to be all revamped, whatever we decide to call, but I don't think any member of Congress would say no Border Patrol or no enforcement. We know we need that, but we need it very different than it is now.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, just completely get rid of DHS? Should they not be in the business of doing immigration enforcement? And how would you enforce the border and undocumented folks that are here, especially criminals that are up for deportation?
Well, first of all, I'm making it clear I want to abolish ICE, period. And we need to make sure that I would not give my vote to fund ICE. I want to see ICE and CBP out of our American cities. They've invaded and occupied our American cities. I don't want them to have any immunity. And any of those federal agents should be prosecuted, investigated, and prosecuted for breaking any laws. We're seeing the terror that they have inflicted upon our communities. Border Patrol should be at the border. We shouldn't see Border Patrol agents walking up and down Michigan Avenue, for example. So we need to completely, to me, it's not about an overhaul of this agency, because I don't see this agency as being reformed. And I do want to just say to Congressman Krishnamurthy, you talk about wanting to see it, abolish Trump's ICE, but we also know that you have voted to thank ICE, you voted to fund ICE, and you have taken money from ICE contractors. That does not give anyone confidence that you're going to be someone who stands up to ICE.
And to clarify, you're referring to an executive from the company Palantir, who is ICE contracts. This is a controversial company because they're involved in surveillance and some of these tools that DHS is using. So I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Lieutenant Governor, with regard to Palantir, I donated the money when it came to my attention to 3 migrant groups. But what's very interesting, and with regard to that resolution that you mentioned, it was about condemning anti-Semitism, and you know better than to say that it was about merely thanking ICE. On the other hand, what we've learned in the last week is very disturbing, which is that, unfortunately, your super PAC received hundreds of thousands of dollars from Core Civic, the largest private prison contractor in the country. And apparently, they even received that money when you were on the executive committee of the DLGA. That's very disturbing. So this hypocrisy about, ICE contractors and so forth has got to end. But this is a very disturbing fact with regard to your finances.
All right, so I should give Congresswoman Kelly, I'll get to you here. Give you a chance, because Core Civic is a company that we've investigated too. They have had problems with the way they've run some of these ICE facilities. They're a very controversial company, so I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I wanted to say about the donation that you made that you said that you made to immigrant rights organizations. It wasn't until people called for it, the public. Your first response from your team was, we'll take money from anybody who is supporting my mission. And then you said it again on national television, I'll take money from anyone. For 7 years, maybe longer, 10 years, you have been calling the CTO of Palantir and asking for money directly to your campaign. It's a phone call you made, and you did it even as recently as June of 2025, when ICE was already in our communities wreaking havoc. And I just want to say that is what people are upset about. Not only did you take the money while they were wreaking havoc, you then went to the House floor in Congress and thanked ICE.
All right, Congressman, I'll give you a chance to respond again, and then I do need to get Woman Kelly in here.
When you were on the executive committee of the DLGA, you received money from Core Civic, which operated Broadview. Core Civic is one of those entities that has been routinely investigated for violations of the law, violations of people's civil rights.
I have never picked up the phone,
please? And you have specifically solicited it, and now you are benefiting from it.
Never picked up the phone.
You're benefiting from it right now.
Never picked up the phone.
Unfortunately, that's unfortunate.
Congresswoman Kelly, all right, so do you see a problem with either or both of these donations?
Both. I mean, what the Lieutenant Governor said with who Raja's taken money from, but also what Raja said about who the Lieutenant Governor, sorry, Congressman, the Lieutenant Governor has taken money from owners of private prisons and also owners of ICE detention centers, and to lecture us like we have been lectured about money, I just, like I've been saying, nothing new, that is very hypocritical to me. And, if it wasn't for Citizens United, a lot of the commercials that we see from the Lieutenant Governor couldn't even exist if Citizens United went away.
Because you're talking about the PAC money that is hidden, it's shielded, it's dark money, quote unquote.
That's not true.
Some super PAC money.
If you're talking, I am not taking any corporate PAC money. in this campaign.
But there are PACs that are separate that might support one of your campaigns that you can't coordinate with. So are you talking about those outside groups?
And I'm not taking any corporate PAC money in this campaign.
But just money from
And
corporate CEOs.
And I've always made sure that I've maintained that commitment. And from what I can see, anybody can look up who a dark sounds like it's something you can't look up, but anybody can look up and see who donated.
All right, well, that's a good point. We could Open Secrets, other websites, folks can go and look at who's donated to. Very quickly, Congressman, you get into the point.
I think the lieutenant governor wants us to have us believe that she's not taking corporate money through the front door of her campaign, but it's coming through the side door, the rear door, the garage, through her super PACs and her lieutenant governor's
campaign. And I think what the congressman wants to do is distract from the fact that he takes money from MAGA allies, the ICE contractors, and the people who are trying to build.
So we're going to direct the viewers now to go research this. That's the beauty of the internet, is they can go research this. I want to move on to Epstein. Show of hands, would you all three vote to compel the DOJ to release everything it has, regardless of whether there's an open investigation? Absolutely. Okay.
We voted.
Congresswoman Kelly, name an accomplishment of yours that helped protect or give agency to victims of sex trafficking or domestic violence.
Well, I am the co-chair and co-founder of the Caucus on Black Women and Girls, and this is a topic that we've had in Washington, D.C. We've had forums here about it, how women can protect themselves, what's available to women, what resources, are for women. And I've done a lot around domestic violence. And like I said, we've done a lot around human trafficking and sex trafficking in D.C. and forums in Illinois.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, an accomplishment that helped protect or give agency to victims of domestic violence or trafficking.
One of the first bills that I passed as a state representative was the Women's Correctional Services Act, because we saw women increasingly being incarcerated. Those numbers were going up, and many of the women end up in the system because of the trauma or violence that they have experienced. In fact, there was a story of a woman who told me that she was in prison and then she went to prison. In other words, she was basically saying that it wasn't just the building or the facility, it was what she was experiencing in her own home and community, and those conditions are what left her there, so led her to being incarcerated. So under my act, we have gender responsive and trauma informed approaches to women's corrections, and I'm proud of the work that now First Lady M.K. Pritzker is also leading in that area, and I was proud to pass that bill several years ago.
All right, Congressman Krishnamurthy, an accomplishment that dealt with victims of domestic abuse or trafficking.
A couple things. One, I was a co-sponsor, I believe Robin was too, of the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women's Act. This is a big deal, and it helped to provide various grants to organizations throughout our districts. In my district, I secured funding for Wings, which is a domestic violence shelter, as well as others. And then I'm helping to lead the investigation on the Oversight Committee with regard to the Epstein situation. After having spent hours with the victims of this just grotesque child sex trafficking ring, there are more than 1,000 victims, then girls, now middle-aged women. I think that it stiffened the resolve of people on both sides to get to the bottom of this, because these women have not had a single measure of justice in over 20 years since they were first trafficked and abused until today. I just spent time reviewing the unredacted files before I came here just a couple days ago, and I believe a lot of that information needs to get out into the public, and I'll be calling for that. In addition to...
These are names. Do you believe there should be prosecutions
yes,
based on the names you've seen?
There should be an investigation. We should absolutely get them to testify before the Oversight Committee, because they might be co-conspirators.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add that when I was a state rep, I did pass legislation around domestic violence. But just as a regular person, I've volunteered and helped, because I actually had a cousin who was murdered by her husband. So domestic violence is extremely important.
Close to home. I want to go to the issue. We had some foreign policy questions, but we've got healthcare, education, environment. We've got a lot to deal with. So foreign policy, I'll maybe save that for the end, but I want to talk about education, because this is something that's not getting covered a lot. The U.S. is falling behind in public education. A study from the Harvard Center of Education Policy concludes that a larger percentage of kids are not meeting grade level reading and math scores. 1 in 4 kids are chronically absent. How will you turn around this decline?
I just have to say one thing in Illinois, and it's not for Congress, but we have to change how we fund schools. I mean, using property taxes on the back, and someone that lives in the south suburbs, and we have some of the highest property taxes, but then some of our schools, they don't have the resources that they need. So on the state level, we have to do that. But also we have to build back the Department of Education and not build it back like it was. We can't go back to the status quo. We need to do better as far as IDEA funding. You know, we're supposed to fund at 40%. We have not, you know, done that. We have to make sure we're not privatizing anything. We have to give money to Title I, again, representing where I represent. They're $2 million in the hole because of what Donald Trump has done. But the superintendent said they will find a way because they're educators and that's what they do. But, and also helping, you know, kids get to college or kids get to, like my son went to college for a little bit, but then he went to a training school. How do we help kids prepare, you know, to do that? But funding like they need to be funded is so important, but we have to build it back, but better than it was.
Beyond funding, though, what can we do? What can the country do? What can you do in the Senate to raise those scores, raise those standards, stop things like chronic absenteeism?
Well, funding is important. I mean, I know you said, what else can we do? But I do want to point out how important funding is, as is supporting our teachers and supporting public education, because that's really what's under attack by this president. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Illinois Federation of Teachers, educators, just like my mother was a public school educator, who understand that this president is attacking public education. You know, when I think about funding, we actually did change the funding formula in Illinois, and we now follow the evidence-based funding formula, and we're making sure that those schools that have higher need are getting more resources to be able to meet the needs of their students. And now in Illinois, we have the highest graduation rates. We've made record investments in education. We have our math and reading scores are going up. So we're seeing real progress. And that starts with early childhood education. We're working to end preschool deserts, K through 12, as I said, record investments, but also making sure that we are expanding MAP grants and making college more affordable, because that's important as well. But we need to support our teachers, pay our teachers, and make sure that we do everything we can, because it's a holistic approach.
Congressman Roger Krishnamurthy, what can you do as a senator to stop the erosion of test scores, absenteeism, and to make public education, K through 12 or higher, competitive again?
Well, look, I'm an immigrant to this country, and I would not be here but for the Peoria Public Schools. So shout out to them and District 150. I agree with my colleagues about funding. That has to happen. But in addition to that, there are a couple other things I respectfully submit for your consideration. One is there have to be more wraparound services to help our children. Increasingly, we're seeing child hunger on the rise, especially with the cut in SNAP benefits. We're now seeing more and more children going hungry to school. And so that's in part, as a product of food stamps myself, I've called for a universal free lunch program for all children across the nation. Where it's practiced, you see hunger go down, you see attendance go up, and you see learning going up. And that's obviously crucial for everyone to prosper. The other thing is you see these immigration raids discouraging people from sending their children to school. And you're seeing people living in fear in the shadows. I imagine that even as a child, if I were in this position, my parents would be fearful of sending me to school because I'm just another brown kid who'd be racially profiled. Finally, I think career technical education has to be front and center for us. It's not right now. More than 64% of Americans don't have a four-year college degree, and for them, our nation's skills-based education system is the preeminent way to get post-secondary education. And so to make it world-class, we have to properly fund it. And so although my law was wildly successful, it hasn't been properly funded. And so that's something that I would work on in the Senate if I were privileged to be there as well.
All right, let's go to a topic that's even beyond foreign policy, outside of the box here. The President Obama made some noise this week saying that there was that extraterrestrial life existed. Then he kind of reformed that and said he had not seen evidence personally of that, but there was this documentary called The Age of Disclosure, which interviewed government whistleblowers that alleged a massive government cover-up of UAPs or UFOs. So, Congresswoman Kelly, do you believe there's a cover-up here, and would you vote as senator to disclose everything the government has on any kind of UAP program?
I would vote to do that as long as it doesn't interfere with national security. I mean, that comes first to me. But like if there's, like we have things that everyone doesn't know, or people have certain clearances. But if there is something that's going to be harmful to the United States or harmful to the world, yeah, I think we need to know about it.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, do you believe some of these allegations that there might be a massive government cover-up here of what the government knows about UAPs?
Well, let me just tell you that I'm traveling the state every single day. And
you haven't heard that once.
And what people are talking to me about is why my campaign is all about giving the people what they want. They want higher wages. They want access to health care, which is why I support Medicare for all. And they want to get corporate PAC money out of politics, which is why I'm not accepting any corporate PAC money. That's what I hear people want, and that's what I'm going to fight for, the people. I'm sure they'll figure out the other issues.
The other issues. Yeah. Congressman, have you been privy to any classified material? That
I have. I'm a Star Trek fan, full disclosure. And so anyway, this is a more serious issue in terms of just more transparency needs to be provided, more disclosure to kind of get away from the conspiracy theories. It goes back to your question about trust in government. I do think that there's a lack of trust in government. There's just not disclosure or transparency, whether it's the Epstein files or whether it's this issue, or even whether it's files surrounding the assassinations of various prominent figures in our history. So I believe in more disclosure, more transparency. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we need to bring it wherever we can.
All right. We'll see if that issue takes control of the minds of voters right now. Perhaps not quite yet. But if you're a Star Trek fan, you're probably thinking about it a lot. Let me ask you this, Congresswoman Kelly. The EPA, President Trump has voted not to have the EPA enforce pollution rules with regard to fossil fuels and greenhouse gases. What can you do as a senator to combat that?
Another ridiculous executive order, but he has so many of them. No, I would definitely fight to reverse that. I would fight to bring back the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. He destroyed that also, and we need to bring that back, but also build on it. I mean, we need clean air, clean water. We need to get rid of lead pipes. We need to get rid of fossil fuel and move to a new generation of clean air and energy. So,
all right. We have 45 seconds. So I want to get both of you. What can be done on a bipartisan basis? What will you get Republican buy-in on?
They want to breathe.
Well, first of all, proud to have been endorsed by the Sierra Club, Illinois today because of my record in protecting our environment. Let's do what we did in Illinois with our Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, CEJA, making sure that we put Illinois on a path to a clean energy future and create jobs in the communities most impacted.
Krishnamurthy.
Codify the rules, not just have it be executive orders that he can change. And then secondly, we have to keep our environmental workforce unpoliticized.
All right. All right. Good stuff. We are out of time.